Thank you, everyone. I'm here not necessarily just as a representative of the University of Massachusetts, but actually as a representative of the 5 College Consortium. So I'm just going to describe briefly who we are. So on the slide here, I have a depiction of Scooby-Doo. So there's a very popular urban legend that the characters of Scooby-Doo are actually modeled from the individual institutions that make up the 5 College Consortium. That, unfortunately, that urban legend has been denied by the creators of the actual show, but nonetheless, it does say something, I think, interesting and also instructive about the various institutions that make up our consortium. So starting on the left, Velma represents Smith College. We have Shaggy representing Hampshire College. Scooby-Doo, of course, is my institution, the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Fred representing Amherst College, and Wilma representing Mount Holyoke. Daphne, sorry. I'm mixing my cartoon metaphors. Daphne representing Mount Holyoke College. So my presentation here is a bit of an ugly duckling, I think, compared to the other 2 presentations that you've heard so far. I'm not necessarily representing a specific project or even a thing. Really, what I'm talking about is a decision-making process, actually sort of a transitionary point in understanding the nature of collaborating around digital preservation in a sort of very small, localized community. So in a way, the 5 colleges is a bit like a family in a lot of ways. We're a small community, a community that is in a lot of ways based on proximity, and a community that has a fairly formal relationship that's represented by an incorporated business structure. So with those family-like aspects, there's also a lot of ways in which we find ourselves to be different. So sort of what I'm talking about is this moment sort of trapped in amber of these institutions trying to understand what it means to collaborate. So I'm going to sort of break this transition into 2 phases. So the initial phase of collaborative work around digital preservation in the 5 colleges started with the formation of a task force. So one of the things that makes our institution, I think, very, very privileged in a lot of ways is that we have a support structure of library directors and even presidents and chancellor of the institutions that understand and support the need for digital preservation. So we do, as a group of institutions, have a mandate to think about these issues and to strategize for solutions for them. So the 5 College Consortium put together a task force to specifically look at these issues. So the first thing that we did was, of course, define the scope, usually what you do when you start a project that's both intimidating and also abstract. We surveyed our institutions to kind of understand the domains of practice. What are we doing in those institutions in terms of creating digital objects, in terms of managing those digital objects? And then we did a formalized assessment of our organizational, technological, and resource readiness using the ADA self-assessment survey. And then finally, we looked at other consortia, some similar, some different, and talked to them about their lessons learned, their experiences in terms of where the benefits, where the efficiencies were in terms of collaborating around digital preservation. So as we were going through this process, we started to hear some very interesting things from the real stakeholders, the members of our institutions who really had the most at stake in terms of digital preservation. Some of the things we heard were, oh, I'm so glad to hear that there's a task force. That is great. Will you figure out digital preservation for me, right? Or, yeah, we're not doing anything really right now. We're waiting for the task force to tell us what to do. So as we heard more things like that, we realized that actually, and also hearing that and talking with some of these other consortia, we realized that there was a little bit more nuance to finding a solution for digital preservation. Also, we started to hear from our administrators, and I don't want to skip over this because I think it's significant, especially when looking at smaller institutions and smaller consortia. From our administrators, we started hearing things like, well, doesn't our membership with HathiTrust solve this problem? Or we implemented locks, right? Aren't we doing digital preservation? And can't we just buy something that's going to solve this problem? And hearing this sort of wide range of sort of knee-jerk responses to digital preservation made us realize that though we were building a foundation of understanding and the kind of foundation that you would build for any project that you hope to implement some kind of product or some kind of solution, we realized that we had to sort of step back a little bit and think both more holistically and in a bit of a more nuanced fashion to figure out how to understand the benefits of collaboration among our institutions. So that sort of gets us to phase 2, where we developed a three-pronged plan to help us understand what that foundation was and what that meant. All right, so the first prong I actually have on the slide as education, and I apologize, there's a typo in the POWER project. There's no E. Apparently I literalized the acronym there, so excuse that. But education is really more along the lines of building expertise. So you're trying to find a way to empower the individuals and the stakeholders in our institutions so they can start making decisions for themselves about what their needs were and how to approach specific problems that are part of that overall process of digital preservation. So we held a week-long Nancy McGovern workshop where we had hand-selected representatives from each institution who not only would take the workshop but then become leaders for those institutions to move their projects forward. We are bringing the POWER workshop to New England to bring our archivists into the fold in terms of training and empowerment. We developed a digital preservation guide that is not necessarily an instruction manual insofar as it is a bunch of thought-provoking points to get institutions to start thinking about, well, what are my digital objects? How are they composed? Can I get them? Are they managed well? We're looking at outreach around that guide, building affinity groups, so groups that are implementing digital repositories and other aspects. Best practices and standardization across the 5 colleges. I don't really need to justify the importance of this. I think that should be pretty clear to this group, but it's something that doesn't exist up until this point and is an opportunity to bring in stakeholders beyond just archivists or those who are designated as having to worry about digital objects. And then finally, experimentation, right? So building all of this expertise, thinking about these issues is abstract unless there's a specific thing to collaborate around. So we are implementing an Archivematica pilot project, not to necessarily pilot the software, but to create an opportunity for a collaborative group among our institutions to come together and make decisions about what it takes to start the process of digitization by just that first step of accessioning and preparing and managing digital objects. So hopefully, not only will it spur collaboration, but it will also give us the hands-on experience to take the next step. So thank you.